And here on the main stage, I will call Roberto Ronzani and Arnaldo Camuffo from Italy. So Roberto, hello Arnaldo. I will leave it to you guys.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I'm just here to introduce you Arnaldo Camuffo. Arnaldo is professor at a business economics and law university in Milan, Italy. And I don't want to take too much time of your Arnaldo, so I pass you the button. Sorry. Me and Arnaldo are co-founder of the Italian Istituto Lean Management, that is the Italian member of Lean Global Network. Your time, Arnaldo.
All right. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Chris. Lovely being here. It is really a pleasure and an honor. And what I'm going to try to share with you today is some reflections that we have developed during the last few years. And they are reflections about the financial performance effect of lean transformations. And this is, I'm going to present you a little bit some research results, and at the same time also provide you some insights about what we learned from this big research project that has inspired, also how Roberto and the Istituto Lean Management in Italy has approached the transformation processes over time. So first of all, the key point here is, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and it's a very let's say well analyzed and well studied problems with I think unsatisfactory results. Which is the problem is that does lean improve financial performance, but more specifically about how likely is that this occurs, and how quickly does this occur. This is a very important question, because my sense is that many managers, but also business owners, do think about lean as a way to improve and to improve also different dimensions of performance and different dimensions of financial performance. We know that lean works. We do not know, however, how this occurs and what are, the real implications for strategic decision making. So the first thing I wanted to do with you in the next 20 minutes or so is, first of all, show you a little bit what are the outcomes of a large research study that we've been conducting in the last few years. We approached the research question of, how much does lean improve financial performance, applying the scientific method, using the experimental investigative approach. So we set up a quasi-experiment. Of course, in order to do this thing right, we should have designed a real experiment and actually run a randomized control trial, allocating randomly companies to lean transformation as a treatment, and keeping other companies unchanged in order to see the pre-post effect of lean transformation. This is a very difficult experiment to run on a large scale, so we resorted to a quasi-experimental methodology and test if lean transformation actually deliver abnormal profitability, which is returns or return on investment, for example, that is significantly different from what a similar company under similar conditions would achieve. And so we identified a sample of almost 200 companies. This is Italian data in Italy that undertook lean transformation according to the canons, the paradigms that we are all familiar with. So not only the applications of lean practices, but a more comprehensive company-wide type of adoption of lean. And then we basically analyzed how these companies over 20 years behaved and performed vis-a-vis similar companies matched by size and by industry. This is the panel, the sample of firms that we have. You see companies that started their lean journey since year 2000, basically up to 2018, and we have a financial data and other data for this. I'm going to skip and to save all the details of the research design of the data collection part, which is available upon request to anyone who would like to drop me an email. But let's say if you wanted to get the sense of what are the results, is the following, and I'm simply showing here the results of this regression on these 2,000 plus companies, and the bottom line of these estimates is that lean the fact of being a lean company indeed generates abnormal returns, abnormal ROIC, by approximately 1.3%, which basically means the following. Okay, so if you take a non-lean company in year 21, for instance, with an 8% return on investment capital, which basically means 8 million in a net operating profit after taxes divided by 100 million of net invested capital, a lean company would perform with a 9.3% return on investment, and therefore generate 1.3 million euro per year of extra net operating profit after taxes. So there's I would say a relatively solid and statistically significant effect in terms of abnormal profitability. How could a company use this number, this data? Well, assume that, for simplicity, this is cash flows. You could enter this number into a formula of net present value or discounted cash flow or real option calculation. And obviously, discounting the cost of the lean transformation, you can actually calculate the net present value of a lean transformation. And I think this data is extremely helpful for whoever wants to invest in lean. However, we also observed that lean transformations could go much better or much worse than average. And this is a puzzling situation, right? The data that you saw before, obviously, it's the average treatment effect. Okay, it's like in a laboratory, you have two samples, and on average, you see what is the difference between the average of the treatment group and the average of the control group. However, this average hides a lot of variation, and we were surprised by the amount of variation that was concealed by our data. There's a variation, there's upright variation, in the sense that there are companies in the sample of lean companies that are doing much better than the average. And you see, for instance, here, simply dividing the lean companies into two tiers, lean tier 1 and lean tier 2. Lean tier 1, the companies who got the transformation right, the best companies, the best transformations, actually were able to achieve almost, let's say, more than 3 times the gains of the lean companies. And again, in this case, the best case, if you want the best case simulation, here you would go not to 8 or to 9.3 net operating profit after taxes, but to 11.8 with a normal profitability of approximately 4%. I was saying there's lots of variation, and there's cross-firm variation, as we just saw, but there's also within firm variation. You see here, this is the average journey in terms of financial performance of the firms in the sample. Here, again, it is plotted the difference in profitability between non-lean and lean companies, and you see actually that it takes some time. There's a sort of J effect in terms of financial performance improvement, with the results actually becoming visible approximately after 3 years, and tempering out and basically peaking after 5 or 6. And so you see here that there's lots of variation, and there's so much variation that in some cases there were lean companies that were not doing any better than the non-lean companies. Okay, and it is interesting to appreciate this, because when you undertake a lean transformation, there's no guarantee that you're going to get the outcomes and the results that you think you're going to get, precisely because the decision to transform an organization according to lean thinking and principles and tools is a decision under uncertainty. And lean transformation should be considered as decisions under uncertainty, and not as any decision under uncertainty, but as those few decisions that I define low frequency, high impact strategic decisions that might really change, transform, decide the destiny of a company. In lean transformations, there are 3 levels of uncertainty. One is an eliminable risk. Okay, and an eliminable risk is the fact that you start your transformation in 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and then this is something that it's really unforeseeable and some sort of uncertainty that is not mitigable. But then there are 2 other types of uncertainty. The second type of uncertainty is type 1 and type 2 errors, right? The possibility to make mistakes and to incur in false positives, false negatives during the lean transformation, which therefore will lead you to make decisions that are not optimal, and therefore that will prevent or hinder financial performance. First, operational performance improvement, and then financial performance improvement. For example, you underinvest in training, or hire the wrong sensei, or underestimate resistance to change by managers, and obviously these things will slow down or hinder or reduce, or even simply do not allow your operational performance improvement and financial performance improvement to become visible, to manifest. But then there's one other more fundamental type of error, which we call type 3 error, which is the mistake related to what is the model in transformation, that is more fundamental, and that really stems from the conception of how you have thought about upfront your lean transformation. For example, you think that the Kaizen Promotion Office would drive operational performance improvements instead of managers and team leaders, or you have, do not make the right balance between these two, or you think that the organization can run a large number of Kaizen events, or that this number of events will increase operational performance linearly, and these type of relationships, causal links, assumptions are wrong because you did not investigate enough about them. So it is important, this is what we learned from the several case studies of that sample of firms that we've studied. It is important to mitigate uncertainty and to reduce first type 1 and 2 errors. And in order to reduce type 1 and type 2 errors in the implementation of lean transformation, we are all aware that we need to run experiments that allow us as decision maker to update our beliefs about what will occur. And for instance, the use of lighthouses or model lines are precisely these attempts to move forward, get more information about what is going to happen, and then update our beliefs with this new information about what is, for instance, the amount of investment that was done, the size of the lean development office, the amount of training that should be done, or that there might be other problems that were unforeseen. We could A/B test with different versions of different lean tools. This is another way in which you choose the better configurations of initiatives that you wanted to carry out. 3P simulations can be also considered ways to do this. But basically, all this boils down to define what are the intermediate KPIs that you think are meaningful, define a baseline, a counterfactual that represents what you think is your current belief, your prior about what's going to happen, and then collect the data pre-post experiment so that you have a posterior, you have gathered information that allow you to update what you believed and what you thought, and therefore mitigate uncertainty. The most interesting part, however, of how to de-risk, if you wish, your lean transformation is the reduction of type 3 errors that in decision science, in statistical studies, is also defined model misspecification. Okay, and the idea here is that you want to avoid solving optimally the wrong problem. And basically, when any lean transformation starts, it starts as a research question. The first need to be validated. Okay, and the Lean Enterprise Institute and within the Lean Global Network, we have one fantastic tool to actually state this research question, which is the Lean Transformation Framework. These set of questions, be it the Lean Transformation Frameworks or more generally asking these questions, allows you to envision future states that should not be taken for granted, because every time we try to predict or we try to envision to build our own future, I mean, we are building something that doesn't exist yet, and therefore we are envisioning something that it is pretty much something that we do not know. And here we are basically building an unknown. And therefore, we have to build these future states, experiment with them, and eventually pick what is the most plausible one. We cannot pick the one with the best returns attached, because it's not there yet. So we cannot experiment, we cannot tell anything about that. But we can speculate or run experiments about its plausibility. And here the idea is to select these attributes, build some causal structures, and test beliefs about them, and then align everybody on this and periodically check. How do you do this? Well, treat lean transformations as a research question. Of course, it can't be a trivial research question or a naive research question of the type, will lean, if I adopt lean, will this improve financial performance? This is a bad research question, and the chance of success adopting this approach is basically random. It's like tossing of a coin. But instead, a good research question, treating the lean transformations as a good research questions, means really building a line of reasoning, something which is plausible, something that makes sense, something that uses good assumptions and also logical implications, etc., to build the future states. So imagine you are in this case, where your goal is to build ROI and to improve ROI as one parameter of financial performance. Obviously, if you break down the ROI into its components, and this is basically the old DuPont formula, but you know that ROI comes from either increasing operating profit or achieving the same operating profit with less investments. Of course, keeping sales the same or improving sales. And here, the effort that who wants to embrace or undertake or revamp a lean transformation is to envision actually the causal path or the multiple causal paths that might lead to that performance improvement. And there are multiples there. For instance, here with the red lines, there's one that passes through inventory, through the reduction of working capital, through the reduction of investment, and eventually to higher ROI. But my challenge for you is to say, okay, but what are the antecedents of this? How I'm going to build a plausible path so that this is going to generate the reduction in inventory or increase in inventory turns that will reduce working capital, that will reduce net invested capital, and that will become visible in this KPI that we have chosen for the time being as meaningful. And here the point is that, as you see, there are multiple potential paths, right? Because you can go through cost, you can go through sales, you can go through investment, you could go through working capital or permanent investment. The thing that I like most is going through sales, okay? How do I envision a future state where by investing in lean capabilities and identifying relevant processes, I can run enough continuous improvement projects so that this, for instance, will let us improve quality, so that customer satisfaction, as measured, for instance, by NPS or net promoting scores or mystery shopping measure or other measures, will eventually translate into sales that will increase ROI. So this is really the challenge that we have ahead, which is to build these paths. So once you have a research question, you can translate this into a conjecture. Example, a conjecture might be, if I invest in training and I build a lean development office and I hire a good sensei, I will start a sizable stream of continuous improvement initiatives in 3 plants and warehouses, which in 12 months will improve by a factor of 10 my inventory turns, that will allow to reduce net working capital by 15 million euro, so that my net financial position to EBITDA ratio will decrease from 6 to 3 in 2 years. Which, by the way, this might be the covenant that the bank put on my balance sheet, which is really, the problem that I'm trying to solve. But if I write this down, beware, okay, that this is more a research question and a conjecture than an actual plan. And therefore, before committing to this, it is important to increase the plausibility, getting data, opinions, running conceptual and physical experiments, so that all these causal relationship, all these things are plausible, okay, are things that make sense up front. Because otherwise, if you start to implement on this, well, what you're going to get is probably an optimal solution or an improvement on a misspecified model and on something which is not plausible. So build a causal structure, a conceptual causal structure, make your belief about it explicit. I mean, one practical exercise of doing this is assign probabilities, okay? How plausible it is that I'm going to hire a good sensei, okay? How plausible it is that if I invest this amount of money, this will actually generate that results. How many continuous improvement projects should I run to actually, improve the operational performance KPI that I've set enough to be then visible in terms of financial performance? And here the idea, if you wish, is really to build these sorts of graphs and, for instance, simply assuming random variables, okay, for instance, these are questions like, how much training, how large the KPO, what type of sensei, how many KAIS events, and therefore, the causal links. And basically, if you wish, think of that causal chain. If you wanted to reduce the net financial position to EBITDA ratio, and you wanted to do this by reducing the net working capital, which should occur by increasing the inventory turns, how many Kaizen events should I run per year? And you can assign probabilities, from the top of your head. This is not big data, this is not large data set, etc. But on the basis of these beliefs, okay, of these subjective probabilities, you can actually come up with a plausibility ratio and then discuss and probably also play this against another state, another model. And before, therefore, committing or converging to one, you might want to pick that. I think that this is what I wanted to share with you. I see that there are 5 minutes left to the end of the session. I'm just wondering if there's any comment or questions here. I've seen that there's one by Paul who asks about the details of the design of experiments on lean transformation. I will, of course, connect to that. I do not know if there's other comments or other questions. I would be glad to take them here in the next couple of minutes or so, or otherwise offline. And thanks, Bill, and everyone for being here with us today.
Okay, there's just only one other comment from Bill Buzzer that enjoy your talk, Arnaldo, and he's asking if you can please share your article slides in the future. There's a last question from Massimiliano Sartor. How you define a lean company?
Thanks, Massimiliano, for the question. I was hoping for somebody to ask that. So in the past, most of the studies that have analyzed the relationship between lean and financial performances simply correlated the number of lean practices adopted in a plant or the degree of adoption of lean practices like just-in-time, TPM, SMED, etc., and then use this as independent variable and address it on financial performance. I'm not using this approach. I'm using a comprehensive approach. So to me, a lean company is a company that has adopted lean holistically at the enterprise level, and that has it is 10 dimensions, and if you wish, we can talk it offline, but that include strategic commitment, investment in resources, involvement of partners upstream and downstream, the adoption of high performance practices, and many others. And so what we did on a large scale, we used the key informants to basically identify the large sample of companies and then to reduce the probability of making mistakes in identifying in naming lean companies as some that were not. We double checked and we did iterations. So I would say that the estimates that we get are conservatives, and that the companies that are included in this sample are really, those who actually adopted lean holistically as a company-wide management system.
Only one last question from Girish Gapalakrishan, if I correctly pronounce it, about how are the saving cost impact tracked by these different firms?
Okay, in running such a large-scale experiment, obviously we are looking for the forest and not for the trees, right? So the only thing that we checked in these companies was the fact that they were actually using KPIs, metrics, and potentially lean accounting in order as part of their management system. Okay, so that's but the savings should be incorporated in the measure. And by the way, I presented data here only on return on investment, but we have similar data also for reduction of net debt over EBITDA, and also on EBITDA on revenues and other financial measures.
Hello, guys. Roberto, Arnaldo.
I have to go to another session, Chris.
Yes, you do. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Arnaldo, for sharing.